Well, look, George Bush is turning the keys over to Obama next week. And he's not through yet. He bankrupted the economy. He wrecked the borders. He slashed the language. He wrecked the culture. He dragged us into 2 wars that he refuses to win or to end. And he's actually set the stage for a total conversion to a Venezuela-like economy. And he's given the keys over to Obama, and the Democrats who are very happy to turn this country into a socialist nation. And it's going on right in front of our eyes. And you say to yourself, well, why didn't you say something sooner? Well, let me remind you of something. I am not a Republican. I have been a self-declared independent conservative ever since I began in radio. Moreover, I warned you about Paulson before you even heard his name. I knew he had come from Goldman Sachs. I saw the warning signs at least 9 months ago. I warned you about him. I feared something like this would happen. I had no idea it would be on this scale. Do you realize that the entire war, in all of these years, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, have estimated costs of approximately $500 million. And yet, just yesterday, after giving hundreds of billions of dollars, the government signs over a check for another $350 billion. Think about how much money that is. We've been complaining about the cost of war, corrupt governmental contracting in Iraq and elsewhere. It's peanuts compared to what these gangsters are doing right now. And it's going on right in front of our eyes. So you say, well, where's the press on this? I want to remind you that a free press for a free people means that the press is not in business with the government. I want to remind you that journalists are supposed to be the watchdogs for the people, not the lapdogs of the government. I want to remind you that with the increasing conglomeration of power in the hands of fewer and fewer media madmen who are intimately connected to the power structure in terms of the governmental power structure, we have now evolved into a Soviet-style media. It's a government media complex. Although benign, nevertheless, you rarely hear criticism of the type necessary to have stopped this wholesale bankrupting of the United States of America and the debasing of the currency. That's why you're not hearing much about it. Oh, you hear occasional complaints on CNBC, but they're usually shouted down by the functionaries who want interviews with various governmental, bureaucrats. Now, of course, last night I couldn't watch it. Bush bids farewell to the American people. Well, we bid good riddance to Bush, but am I supposed to just play this garbage? I mean, he said, I have followed my conscience and done what I thought was right. That's great, George. Why don't you look at the reality of what you did? Who cares about your conscience? Maybe your conscience is a crackpot. Who says your conscience is necessarily sane? Maybe your conscience is crazy or flawed. Maybe you're a nut. He says, I followed my conscience and done what I thought was right. Does anyone tell him what he's done? Does he understand the wreckage around him? No, I guess not. Not with a compliant press. Bush tries to cement legacy in farewell speech. Bush leaves behind 2 unfinished wars and an economy in turmoil, and he warned in a speech of tough times ahead. No kidding. Well, my goodness, I can't. Oh, Bush is emotional at the thought of leaving office, along with his wife, Laura. Laura, another prize. I know you're not supposed to say anything about the First Lady. I'm not a big fan of Laura. I don't go for Stepford wives. I never have. I distrust them. Okay, and behind every great man, there's a great woman. Behind every moron, there's a moronic wife. That's all I can say. Is she let this go on? Maybe she should have committed him at some point. She should have called out the men with the butterfly nets. He'll receive a pension of $200,000 in his first year of retirement, his new home in Dallas. $200,000 should pay for the root canal costs more today. How can they earn so little money? It's unbelievable. How do they make such little money? No wonder they're all corrupt. If you pay them more, if the president made $10 million a year, maybe they wouldn't be so bent. Be the problem. I don't know the answer to that. So here we're moving now into an articulate new president who is an outright socialist. Bush was an inarticulate president who was a crypto socialist. I caught something yesterday that you haven't seen in the news that's worth talking about. It was on an obscure page of the Wall Street Journal with a picture of Condoleezza Rice-Aroni. And the headline says, U.S. and UAE to sign nuclear cooperation pact. I had to turn back to this 4 times. The Bush administration plans to sign a nuclear cooperation agreement with the UAE on Thursday. Now, I told you that he still has a week to go. That's a week to go. Do you understand this? A week to go. So he signed yesterday a nuclear cooperation agreement with the United Arab Emirates. So I said, wait a minute. This is one of the administration's final foreign policy acts? Will help the United Arab Emirates become the first Arab nation to develop a nuclear power industry? Does anyone see what's going on? Does anyone understand that George Bush was most likely, I don't know what word to use, I have to be very careful. I'm going to use the correct word. A frontman for the Arab moneyed interests? A stooge of the Arab money interests? Something light like that would work. I don't have any other words that I could use. Their man in Washington, sort of a reversal of our man in Havana. Does this make sense? If you look back, a wise man once wrote, life must be lived forward but can only be understood backwards. Well, it's the same with the presidency. It must be tolerated on a daily basis, but it can only be understood by looking backwards at it. If you look backwards at Bush's legacy, and you start with him signing virtually on the last day of his in office, almost the last day, a nuclear cooperation pact with a quasi trustworthy friend in the United Arab Emirates, you have to ask yourself, why is he doing this? Some U.S. lawmakers we see are seeking to block the UAE deal over fears it could fuel a nuclear arms race in the Middle East at a time of mounting concerns over Iran's nuclear ambitions. I want to remind you that the UAE's, the United Arab Emirates, has a major league business relationship with Iran, which is right across the straits from Iran. I know you don't want to talk about this. It's an obscure article.